What's going on, guys? Back again with another Naruto video. So in one of my previous videos, I made a horrific mistake and ranked the entirety of the Akatsuki. Even though it's a really good video, you should definitely go and check it out. Obviously, ranking the Akatsuki is going to be super controversial because there's so many opinions floating out there. But throughout that video, I made a lot of controversial rankings, many of which angered basically the entire Naruto fan base. And I had anticipated the placement of Kakuzu in particular would draw out this unstoppable weeaboo rage, and they would pillage my Discord and comment section, and I knew the Naruto community is just not going to be okay with me putting Kakuzu above characters like Itachi and Pain, mostly because Itachi and Pain are insanely powerful in their own right, but they're also really popular and fan favorites. So even if I do present like a logical and good argument for why I believe that Kakuzu is stronger than them, you know, there's obviously going to be that bias towards those characters, and there's just really nothing I can do about that. So in spite of that, I still tried to make an extreme effort to put together what I consider to be a very large and convincing pool of evidence, and I addressed many of the major, common, and counter arguments that I believe people would try and make, but even with that, it still wasn't enough. It's obvious to me that there needed to be some more explanation as to why Kakuzu is considered so strong by my standards. So that's why I'm making this video, to explain why Kakuzu is being massively downplayed by a vast majority of the Naruto fanbase, and to display the extraordinary strength of Kakuzu. I'll be dividing this video up into two sections. First, we'll go over the many feats and statements of Kakuzu, which will then utilize to scale his powers and abilities. And in the second portion of the video, I will make an in-depth analysis of the reason many people consider Kakuzu to be weak or mediocre, and then display why these beliefs are completely ignorant and a mischaracterization of Kakuzu. Now that introductions are out of the way, let's go ahead and dive headfirst into the obscure side of Naruto power scaling. To begin, Kakuzu's intelligence has virtually gone unnoticed by a massive portion of the Naruto fanbase. Over all of the threads I've read and the dozens of videos I've watched, the years I've spent researching and reading through the ancient texts of Naruto libraries, I have never seen anyone recognize the insane intellect of Kakuzu, which is in direct support of the video's theme. Kakuzu at the age of his death was 91 years old, one of the oldest Naruto characters in the series. He has battled against hundreds, possibly thousands of enemies, participated in multiple wars and conflicts, and overall possesses overwhelming battle experience that is almost unrivaled by any other character in the series. Kakuzu was even present during the era of Hashirama, the first Hokage. Not only was he alive during this reign, but he was even sent on a mission to assassinate Hashirama. Kakuzu, of course, did not succeed in this mission and barely made it out alive, but I will address why this doesn't affect the scaling for Kakuzu in the next section of the video. Kakuzu himself has a very formulaic and methodical approach to every encounter. In the third data book, Kakuzu is described as being capable of adapting to each of his opponents and forming strategies on the spot in a preposterously short amount of time. This is shown to us in Kakuzu's encounter with Team Asuma. After hours, possibly days of preparation from Shikamaru, arguably the smartest character in the entire series of Naruto, he whom possesses an IQ over 200 as a child created a plan to capture and defeat Kakuzu. Shikamaru set up a surprise ambush in Kakuzu's path and began the fight by throwing kunai-rigged explosive tags at Kakuzu. The intention of Shikamaru's explosive tags was to distract Kakuzu and Hidan from the actual threat of his shadow possession, and amongst the kunai thrown, Shikamaru hid a fake explosive tag on one of the kunai in an attempt to trick and capture both of the immortals in his shadow possession. It was in the midst of this blast and smoke that Kakuzu immediately recognized what was happening and hid one of his arms and hearts under the ground, which he would later use to circumvent Shikamaru's shadow possession attack and battle plan. This is the only time in the entire series that one of Shikamaru's strategies has directly failed. Kakuzu, with no preparation whatsoever, was instantly able to deflect and defeat a premeditated plan from Shikamaru and save both himself and Hidan in the process. The reason Kakuzu was able to do what so many before had failed was because throughout the countless years of fighting, Kakuzu had experienced numerous nearly fatal encounters, which ingrained a prudent behavior within himself. Every fight, every battle, every technique and strike would be carefully calculated and thought out well in advance before execution, which is one of the many reasons Kakuzu is so successful in combat. The development of his expert analytical skills even allows him to gauge the level of power of his opponents simply by looking at them. This is actually how he judges whether or not it's worth taking one of his opponent's hearts. That's a part of the video I'll cover later, but Kakuzu's intellect is something that many people do not take into consideration, but he's actually one of the most battle intelligent, oriented, and wit-based fighters in the entire show. I mean, how many characters have we seen capable of outdoing one of Shikamaru's plans? He's arguably the best contriver in the entire series. I don't believe anything else needs to be said about this, so now we will go ahead and segue into Kakuzu's strength and attack potency. Starting off, Kakuzu was casually able to dismantle Asuma and his entire squad, casually harming Asuma when Hidan got into trouble. Hidan himself was competing with Asuma in combat and was eventually able to even kill him. This is impressive because Kakuzu is stated by Kakashi to be stronger of the two, and Asuma also states that both Kakuzu and Hidan are stronger than him, to confirm everything I have said. Asuma himself is an elite Jonin who's described in the third data book as being on par with Kakashi, and is also stated to be the best close quarters combat fighter in the entire Leaf Village. After the death of Asuma, Team Asuma seeks revenge and gains the aid of Kakashi as their squad leader. During this battle, Kakuzu casually overpowers Kakashi, as his water-style jutsu was unable to cancel out Kakuzu's wind-enhanced fire jutsu. Kakashi's most powerful chakra nature is lightning style, and Kakuzu was even able to stalemate Kakashi's strongest lightning style technique, the Raikiri, or otherwise known as the Lightning Blade. This is impressive because throughout the entire run of Naruto, Kakashi's Lightning Blade has never failed a single time except when it engaged Kakuzu's attack. The same Lightning Blade was even able to pierce the 6 pads of pain and the likes of Obito. Even this is by no means the most impressive scaling for Kakuzu's strength. In order to go into this, I need to explain the narrative intentions and goals of the Akatsuki itself in order to give a reasonable and convincing argument for Kakuzu's attack potency. The entire purpose of the Akatsuki second generation is to find and capture the 9 Biju in order to resurrect the 10 Tails. Obviously, in order to capture a Biju, you would be required to have some kind of method of dealing with these monstrous beasts of nature, or else you'll literally just get eaten or obliterated. It's because of this that Pain carefully chose every Akatsuki member who he believes has the skill set to take on a Biju. This is directly stated in the third data book, as Pain believes a pair of Akatsuki members will lose neither to a Biju nor Jinchuriki. This is important because obviously Kakuzu is a member of the Akatsuki, sent to capture Biju, and has succeeded in capturing both the 7 Tails and 2 Tails Jinchurikis. The data book also states in the same image that the Akatsuki are simply stronger than Jinchuriki. So it's reasonable to say that Kakuzu himself has the capability of dealing with Jinchuriki, so obviously Kakuzu can take on Hagoromo and the Jinchuriki of the 10 Tails. This would scale him above the vast majority of the Jinchuriki, bar like Naruto, who casually scales higher than the other Biju. It can be argued that by the term strong, they're not referring to physical strength, but rather their overall combat ability. But Kakuzu himself is a strength-based fighter who generally opts to fight opponents head-on with his brute strength or powerful ninjutsu. This is why his ninjutsu or his strength would inherently have to scale to these Biju, or he wouldn't have a method to dealing with them. There's also no way for him to bypass his opponent's durability, so he is basically forced to literally beat down Biju with pure power. The Biju themselves are capable of creating multi-continental levels of force with their Biju bombs, and the 8 Tails is able to withstand that same level of force as he took one of his own Biju bombs to his chest, after also tanking attacks from the likes of the 10 Tails. The other Biju are also able to damage the 8 Tails and Killer Bee with their melee attacks, which suggests that they're able to output a similar amount of force with them as well. Specifically, the 7 Tails Jinchuriki was even able to melt the 8 Tails skin. Biju are also stated to become more powerful when they are given a Jinchuriki to channel their power. Yugito specifically was able to gain mastery over Madatabi at an extremely young age, yet Kakuzu and Hidan were still able to defeat her. This means that Kakuzu would have multi-continental attack potency. Next, we'll quickly go over Kakuzu's durability. We never get to see the battle, even if there was one between the 7 Tails and Kakuzu, as it is only briefly mentioned in the anime, but we do get to see some of the fight with Yugito. During this encounter, we see Kakuzu withstand a fireball that blows up at the compound he and Hidan were trapped in. This blast was later shown to tear apart the city and partially obliterate a significant portion of a nearby mountain. We also see Kakuzu tank a direct paw strike from a full Madatabi avatar. This is impressive for the reasons I mentioned earlier about the Biju being able to output similar similar levels of force of their Biju bombs into their standard attacks, logically Kakuzu must be able to withstand at least a comparable amount of energy or damage, otherwise his bodies would break apart from the strain and automatic counterforce whenever he exerts himself, so his durability would be around multi-continental as well. Kakuzu also states during the Shikamaru fight that he is invulnerable to physical attacks, which means Kakuzu believes he is so durable that he could take on anything else in the verse without being damaged. This is of course only in reference to Kakuzu's knowledge, but we do know Kakuzu has gone toe-to-toe and into melee combat with literal Biju in perfect Jinchuriki. This means that Kakuzu doesn't believe a Biju nor a Jinchuriki can physically harm him at all. Now, normally I would say this might be some form of ego, but Kakuzu really doesn't have an ego. He doesn't really hype himself up in the rest of the series, so it would be really out of character for him just to randomly sprout it at this time, and also he has a bunch of other supporting evidence to suggest his durability scales with Biju as well, so I think this is pretty consistent. Moving on to speed, this is where a vast majority of the controversy takes place, so buckle in for a ride. Almost no one takes into consideration how fast Kakuzu was during the Kakashi fight, and how fast Kakuzu would have needed to be in order to react and combat Matatabi's paw strike. I briefly went over this in my Akatsuki ranking video, which you should go and check out after you're done watching this one. Kakuzu was casually able to blitz Kakashi while prone on the ground, and he did so right in front of him when Kakashi's Sharingan and Lightning Blade were activated, both of which amplify his speed. This is impressive because the same Kakashi was capable of fighting on par with the Paths of Pain. This would mean that Kakuzu possesses superior speed to the paths that Kakashi was comparable to. This, of course, similar to earlier, is less impressive than Kakuzu's speed feat of blocking a strike from Yugito. Yugito during the War Arc, whilst possessed by Obito, was capable of clashing with base Killer Bee. Bee also states that he had apparently fought her multiple times before when she was alive, and in the Naruto art book it is stated that Bee looked up to her as a shinobi. There are multiple valid interpretations of this statement that do not necessarily upscale Yugito, but I believe it is consistent with the other information provided to say that she was a comparable shinobi to Killer Bee. This would mean Kakuzu has at least combat and reaction speed relative to base Bee. This is impressive because Bee has a massive array of speed feats throughout his run, some of which include blitzing all of Team Taka, keeping up with KCM Naruto, saving KCM Naruto from the Raikage, catching up to KCM Naruto after going for a potty break, fighting on par with Edo Itachi, who is also comparable to KCM Naruto, and intercepting Minato's attack from the Raikage. Moreover, the Raikage is capable of blitzing MS Sasuke during the Kage Summit, and is able to perform the Lariat in conjunction with Bee at the speed of light. He also considered himself to be the fastest shinobi alive after Minato died. It is also stated in the 4th data book that he boasts speed not inferior to the Yellow Flash. Obviously, KCM Naruto blitzed the same Raikage, proving him wrong, and Bee is comparable to him in base, so he's just actually wrong on that. In short, Kakuzu, through scaling to Yugito, should be comparable in speed to Bee, who is faster than the Raikage and on par with KCM Naruto. This will be the final section of the first part of the video, and it will end my scaling for Kakuzu. This script is already extremely long, and I would like to finish it as soon as possible, so I'm going to briefly cover each of Kakuzu's major abilities. Kakuzu has master of all 5 chakra natures and can emit devastating attacks over a large area. He can also combine these chakra natures to form a more deadly jutsu. Kakuzu's biology is completely composed of steel threads that he has complete manipulation over and can utilize them in numerous ways, such as grappling opponents and even healing characters by sewing them together. This sewing can apparently even reattach body parts and still allow them to be fully functional, which makes Kakuzu actually a pretty useful medical ninja. Kakuzu has an Earth-style jutsu named Diamond Morph, which in the databook is described as a versatile jutsu, capable of increasing the destructive force of unarmed attacks, and also as a defensive mechanism capable of hardening the skin to raise Kakuzu's overall durability. The only downside to this jutsu is that whichever body part is hardened becomes immobile. Kakuzu himself is a part of the immortal duo with Hidan, as he was able to extend his lifespan by stealing the hearts of other shinobi. This is how he is capable of utilizing all 5 chakra natures, as they are the natures of his other hearts. These hearts also have their own bodies, own consciousness, and can act autonomously from Kakuzu. This is how he was able to avoid Shikamaru's shadow possession, as he buried his threads along with one of his hearts into the ground and then used that heart to free himself from the possession. Kakuzu is also an extremely skillful shinobi, as mentioned earlier, and is adept in numerous fighting styles. This is apparent as Kakuzu was not only an elite shinobi, but was also the strongest samurai from his village during his younger days, which would mean he is skillful in the ways of both the ninja and samurai. The entire composition of the Akatsuki is made up of S-class ninja who aren't really contested by anyone lesser than elite Jonin and Kage from other villages, so it's safe to say that Kakuzu is an extremely skilled and versatile fighter with a plethora of dangerous hacks and abilities. Now for this section of the video, as I stated earlier, I will be addressing the ridiculous amount of misconceptions and beliefs that surround Kakuzu and explain why these so-called anti-feats are not anti-feats and easily explained within the narrative of the story itself. Kakuzu's speed is by far the most heavily contested aspect of my scaling, so I suppose I should get this out of the way first and give an explanation as to why Kakuzu should scale to characters like Bee and Yugito. So to explain in the speed section, we directly saw Kakuzu block an attack from Perfect Jinchuriki Yugito, so obviously Kakuzu's combat reaction speed is quick enough to block attacks from Yugito. We later see an Edo Yugito fight on par with Killer Bee during the war, which is super impressive for Yugito, which of course would then secondarily scale Kakuzu based on the feat mentioned before. The biggest issue when discussing this line of scaling is that there is a common misconception that the Jinchuriki's speed are being amped by Obito. The evidence used to support this are the statement from Naruto where he points out the Jinchuriki are using the Rinnegan shared vision and the movement tracking from the Sharingan. People use this statement to say that the Jinchuriki have the actual Rinnegan and Sharingan, and then try to say those dojutsu amp speed, therefore they're faster. I can't believe I'm having to explain this, but those Jinchuriki don't have actual Sharingan or Rinnegan. They have a projection of the Sharingan or Rinnegan, which only grants them the visual properties of the dojutsu, or at least from what we know. Obviously, there aren't 6 extra Rinnegan and 6 extra Sharingan just lying around ready for Madara and Obito to use so that they can surgically transplant them into the Jinchuriki. This is proven later when Naruto removes the rods from the Jinchuriki and the projections fade away. The only thing we can derive from the statement is that the reaction speed and surrounding perception the Jinchuriki have has been enhanced to an unknown degree. So yes, I will agree Yugito's mental reaction speed in this scenario has been enhanced, but as shown in the beginning of the series all the way back to Lee and Sasuke's confrontation during the tuning exams, simply having the mental reaction time to see attacks does not mean you will be able to physically react to them. We see Yugito is clearly able to physically keep up with Bee regardless of her reaction speed. She's able to run and move alongside him, she's able to intercept Bee and Naruto, she's able to clash with them at multiple points, which means her physical combat and travel speed is on the level of Bee and KCM Naruto. The third statement is the other part of this page where it is stated by the Eight Tails that the Jinchuriki abilities are being enhanced by their ocular powers. This statement in particular is rather ambiguous because we don't know which abilities are being enhanced by the ocular powers, so once again it's impossible to pinpoint speed as the thing being enhanced. If you keep reading, you can see that Gyuki is directly referring to their combination attacks and is only saying that they're able to perform combination attacks better due to their tracking and shared vision. This has already been addressed as having better reaction speed and area perception, so it doesn't directly correlate to physical movement at all. This is also not taken into account that these Jinchuriki are under Edo Tensei, which severely nerfs you and is one of the hardest nerfs in the entire series. Madara, while under the Edo Tensei, achieved Hashirama cells, the Rinnegan, and on top of that got Revive and acquired Hashirama Sage mode and was still not at full power. This isn't even taking into account that Madara's Edo Tensei was the best made Edo Tensei on the entire battlefield, as Kabuto specifically tried to resurrect him to full power, unlike all of the other Edo Tensei, and it was still weaker than his prime after undergoing like 4 different amps. For people to think that the projection of this Rinnegan and Sharingan is going to increase these Jinchuriki's speed to an extent that it would surmount the nerf given by the Edo Tensei is actually crazy to me. Kakuzu scales and fights a prime alive perfect Jinchuriki Yugito. There's absolutely no way you can say he does not scale to the Edo Yugito during the war arc. Now that that rant is out of the way, I want to quickly go over a few more arguments people try and downplay Kakuzu with. How is Kakuzu Biju level when Kakashi and base Naruto were able to damage him? Firstly, Kakashi was only able to damage Kakuzu because he ambushed him from behind and he used a lightning-style Raikiri, which his Earth-style Diamond Armor is weak to. If you ever played a Pokemon game and understand the mechanic behind the typing system, this is virtually the same with nature transformations in Naruto. Lightning is strong against Earth in this case, therefore Lightning-style wins. It's not because Kakuzu is simply weaker than Kakashi. Naruto was also only able to damage Kakuzu by using the Rasen Shuriken, which attacks on such a minute level that it affects the cells directly. This means that the blades of the Rasen Shuriken are so small that they would simply go between the level of conventional durability and would pass through the defense of most characters. The third Raikage is a character who is able to withstand the Rasen Shuriken, which suggests that he possesses cellular level defense with his lightning armor. This is supported by the fact that at the end of the fight when we see Kakuzu, his body is not completely obliterated and is still intact. This would mean Kakuzu's actual body was never destroyed or beaten, but rather his internal cells were obliterated. This is literally clearly confirmed by Tsunade as well, when she directly states that the Rasen Shuriken functions more like poison rather than physical trauma, which means Kakuzu was physically durable enough to tank the actual blast of the Rasen Shuriken, but lacked the cellular level defense to survive the minute blades penetrating his cells. Saying Kakuzu wasn't durable enough to tank this attack would be the equivalent of saying Itachi wasn't durable enough to tank his sickness. It doesn't function like a standard attack, it doesn't function with brute force, it functions with minute blades that bypass conventional durability altogether, and those with cellular level defense are the only ones able to avoid being harmed by it. Another common argument people try and make is that Pain is the leader of the Akatsuki, and there is a statement that even the most notoriously strong members obey him. This statement doesn't necessarily mean anything, considering that the strong members are not inherently following him out of fear for his strength. There are tons of real-life analogies to this situation that I could give you, but this example is a clear illustration. Suppose we have an old war general that is commanding an army. There are tons of strong, young soldiers within this army, most of which are probably more physically imposing than the general himself. Is the general now stronger than all of his young prime soldiers that follow him? Obviously not. They're probably following him for other reasons, and the situation between Pain and the rest of the Akatsuki could easily be similar. Another argument I have heard made is that Kakuzu was cut during the war arc by some random tuning. For one, these random tuning are characters. These characters have no anti-feats in the series, so if they did scale to Kakuzu, that just means they're also strong. This is ignoring the fact that Kakuzu is literally an Edo at this point as well, and I have already gone into depth as to why being an Edo severely nerfs their physical capabilities, and these same tuning were present during the fight with Kakuzu and Hidan, yet they basically did nothing to either of them. There's also the argument that Hidan was the one to kill Yugito, which is not supported because we don't see the fight, we only see the aftermath where Hidan had already used his ritual on Yugito. In order to perform that ritual, you would need the blood of Yugito, but it's ambiguous to who actually got the blood of Yugito during the fight, so we don't actually know who killed her. There were also two other statements that suggest Kakuzu was even the one to kill Yugito, as Hidan admits he's the slowest member in the Akatsuki and might not be fast enough to tag Yugito. And there's also the statement from Hidan in the same panel where he says Kakuzu is usually the doer of the two, which implies that Kakuzu is usually the one who deals with the Biju. Even if you disregard all of this evidence and say Hidan was the one to kill Yugito, it is stated by Kakashi that Kakuzu is the stronger of the pair, which means that Kakuzu also would be able to kill Yugito even if Hidan was the one who actually did it. The final and most ridiculous argument for why Kakuzu sucks grapes is that he lost to Hashirama. I don't know why or how people think because Kakuzu got beat up by Hashirama, he wouldn't be on the level of Biju. Because that implies losing to Hashirama is enough of an anti-feat to put a character below Biju level. The same Hashirama that beat the Susanoo-attired nine-tailed fox, the same Hashirama that put the absolute whoop-ass on Madara with the true 1000 hands. Is Madara now below Biju level because he lost to Hashirama? I mean, he lost to him, right? Losing to Hashirama is not an anti-feat at all. Losing to Hashirama not dying is actually probably a really good feat. I mean, how many people have actually survived a battle with him? So saying Kakuzu loses to Hashirama is not bad at all, because literally everyone up until late in the war arc pretty much loses to him, including all of the Jinchuriki and Biju. Alright guys, that'll pretty much wrap up the video. There might be some smaller arguments that I missed, so if you notice one of them, make sure to leave a comment below to let me know what I forgot to cover. If you guys enjoyed the content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and share with your friends, because I will be posting more content similar to this in the near future. Big thanks to the guys listed on screen. This video would have been possible without them, but they saved me a lot of time and headache, so again, big shout out to all of them. As for the videos I plan on doing next, I'm now going to be doing my first Bleach and Naruto crossover, specifically Yuha versus Hagoromo, so for all of those who are interested in that matchup, make sure to get hyped for it. I also plan on doing a video on the legendary Killer Bee, and I'm also partaking in two separate collaboration videos, one with Surfbone on his channel, where we will be talking about attack potency and destructive capability, and some other subcategories related to those, and I'll also be doing a video with Just a Robot on his channel, Madara versus Aizen. I'm not sure when exactly this video will come out though, so just be aware that it is in the works and stay excited for it. Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed, and peace.